I'm Jessica Bennett, 29, and last Tuesday, my phone pinged with a voice memo that would shatter my entire world. Mom, I can't keep lying to Jessica anymore. I've been sleeping with Michael for 6 months. Michael, my fiancé of 3 years. The voice belonged to my sister, Olivia. My hands trembled as I replayed it, hoping I'd misheard. But there it was, the ultimate betrayal from the two people I trusted most. What they didn't know was that their little secret would cost them everything. Hey everyone! Before I dive into this family betrayal story that completely turned my life upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you're new here, this channel is all about real-life drama and the sweet justice that sometimes follows. Trust me, you'll want to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because the revenge in this story. Chef's kiss. Now, let's get into how my perfect life crumbled in an instant, and how karma came back around in the most unexpected way. Growing up in Savannah, Georgia, our family was the envy of the neighborhood. The Bennetts, successful, attractive, and seemingly perfect. My father, Richard, ran a prosperous law firm while my mother, Eleanor, managed the social calendar that kept us firmly established in Savannah's elite circles. Our colonial-style home, with its sprawling veranda, hosted countless garden parties and holiday gatherings where everyone who was anyone made appearances. Olivia was the firstborn, 3 years my senior, and from childhood, she'd been groomed to follow in our father's footsteps. With her sharp mind and uncanny ability to read people, she was already making waves at her law firm by age 28. I still remember how she'd practice closing arguments in the mirror as a teenager, while I'd sit cross-legged on her bed, watching in awe. I took a different path. Photography captured my heart early on, much to my parents' initial dismay. Artists don't have stability, my father would say with a dismissive wave. But when my work began appearing in national magazines and commanding impressive fees, their tune changed. Suddenly, having an artistic daughter became a charming talking point at their social gatherings. Despite our different paths, Olivia and I had always been close, or so I thought. We shared clothes, secrets, and dreams. When I was bullied in middle school for being too quiet, it was Olivia who confronted my tormentors. When she was stressed about her bar exam, I was the one who stayed up all night with her, quizzing her until sunrise. Our bond seemed unbreakable. That's why, when I met Michael Wright at a charity gala 3 years ago, Olivia was the first person I called. "Jess, you're glowing just talking about him," she'd said, her voice warm with what I now realize was calculated interest. "I need to meet this man immediately." Michael was everything I hadn't known I was looking for. A cardiothoracic surgeon with gentle hands and an even gentler demeanor, he balanced my sometimes chaotic creative energy with steady calm. He'd attend my gallery openings wearing a proud smile, and I'd wait up with homemade soup on the nights he had marathon surgeries. When he proposed on the beach at sunset a year ago, with Olivia hiding nearby to capture the moment on camera, I felt like I'd finally secured my piece of the Bennett family perfection. Our parents adored him. Finally, my mother would say, someone worthy of a Bennett daughter. Michael integrated seamlessly into family dinners, holiday traditions, and even my father's sacred Sunday golf outings. He charmed everyone, especially Olivia. Looking back, there were signs I willfully ignored. The way Olivia would touch his arm a moment too long when laughing. How they always seemed to be in deep conversation when I returned from freshening up at restaurants. The inside jokes that left me feeling vaguely excluded. Once, I even found them standing unusually close in our kitchen during a family barbecue, their conversation stopping abruptly when I entered. "Just discussing a surprise for you," Olivia had said smoothly, while Michael busied himself with pouring more wine. I remember feeling a flicker of unease, but I quickly buried it. After all, this was my sister, my protector, my confidant. And Michael was the man who looked at me like I hung the moon. Doubt felt like a betrayal of them both. Our wedding was set for June, just 3 months away. We'd secured the historic Forsyth Park for the ceremony, and my custom gown hung in my studio, waiting for final alterations. Olivia, naturally, was my maid of honor, helping with every decision from floral arrangements to menu selections. She'd even suggested a joint bachelor-bachelorette weekend at our family's beach house on Tybee Island, which in retrospect was probably just to ensure she could keep an eye on Michael. "You're so lucky, Jess," she'd told me the night of our engagement party, glass of champagne tilting precariously in her hand. "Some of us might never find what you have." There was a strange expression on her face as she said it, something between longing and resentment. But I'd hugged her tightly, promising that her person was out there somewhere. "And when you find him, I'll be your biggest cheerleader," I'd vowed, oblivious to the fact that she'd already decided her person was mine. The weekend before I received that fateful voice memo, we'd all been at our parents' home for Sunday dinner. Olivia had been uncharacteristically quiet, picking at her food while Michael seemed overly animated, telling elaborate stories about hospital mishaps that had everyone laughing. My mother had caught my eye across the table, raising an eyebrow at Olivia's subdued behavior. "Are you feeling all right, darling?" she'd asked, reaching to feel Olivia's forehead in that instinctively maternal way. "Just tired from a big case," Olivia had replied, forcing a smile. "Nothing to worry about." Later, as I helped my mother with the dishes, she'd mentioned that Olivia seemed off lately. "Maybe the pressure of being maid of honor is getting to her," she'd suggested. "You know how she likes everything to be perfect." "I'll talk to her," I promised, never imagining that the real reason for Olivia's strange behavior was the weight of her massive betrayal. That night, as Michael and I drove home, he was unusually affectionate, reaching across the console to hold my hand, bringing it to his lips repeatedly. "What's gotten into you?" I'd laughed, charmed by his attentiveness. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," he'd replied, his eyes never leaving the road. "You and your family have given me everything I've ever wanted." Those words would echo in my mind days later with a sinister new meaning. Because what Michael wanted, it seemed, wasn't just me, it was the entire Bennett package. The prestige, the connections, and apparently, both Bennett daughters. As we fell asleep that night, his arm draped possessively across my waist, I remembered feeling a surge of gratitude for my perfect life, a thriving career, a loving fiancé, and the unwavering support of my family, especially my sister. How quickly perfect images can shatter when you discover they were nothing but elaborate illusions. And how unprepared I was for the painful truth that would soon turn my world upside down. The morning of the voice memo began like any other Tuesday. I'd woken early to prepare for a photo shoot with a local magazine, leaving Michael still asleep in our bed. He had the day off, a rare occurrence he'd mentioned he planned to use for wedding errands. I kissed his forehead before slipping out, a gesture that now makes my stomach turn. The photo shoot featured a rising chef in her restaurant kitchen, all stainless steel and controlled chaos. I'd just finished setting up my lighting when my phone buzzed with a notification. A voice memo from Olivia. Nothing unusual there, we often sent voice messages while multitasking through our busy days. I pressed play without thinking, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear as I adjusted my camera settings. The background noise in her message suggested she was in her car. "Mom, I can't do this anymore." Olivia's voice sounded strained, almost tearful. "I've been trying to find the right time to end things with Michael, but he keeps saying he'll leave Jessica after the wedding. 6 months of sneaking around is destroying me." My hands froze on the camera. The chef was saying something about angle preferences, but her voice faded to white noise as Olivia's confession continued. "He says he only proposed because Dad made that comment about settling down, and then it just happened. But Mom, he tells me he's never loved anyone like he loves me. That Jessica was just convenient. The right image." I know I'm horrible for letting this go on so long, but I love him. God help me, I do. There was a long pause, and then a whispered, "Please don't hate me." The message ended. I don't remember dropping my phone. The chef later told me it clattered dramatically against the tile floor, the sound making everyone in the kitchen jump. I don't remember apologizing or packing up my equipment. I only remember the ringing in my ears and the sudden, overwhelming urge to vomit. Somehow I made it to my car before the tears came, violent, body-racking sobs that left me gasping for air. 6 months. While I'd been tasting wedding cakes and choosing floral arrangements, my sister and fiancé had been betraying me in the most intimate way possible. I sat in that parking lot for what felt like hours, replaying the message until every word was seared into my brain. The chef sent concerned texts that I couldn't bring myself to answer. Finally, when my tears had dried into something cold and hard in my chest, I started the car. I didn't go home. I couldn't face the apartment Michael and I shared, with its carefully chosen furniture and framed photographs of our fabricated happiness. Instead, I drove to the Battery, parking near the waterfront where tourists usually gathered to take pictures of Fort Sumter. The irony wasn't lost on me, a photographer seeking refuge in one of the most photographed spots in the city. As I stared at the water, my phone exploded with activity. First Olivia, clearly realizing her messaging mistake, "Jess, I need to talk to you. Please call me. It's important." Then my mother, "Jessica, honey, call me immediately." And finally Michael, "Where are you? Your client called me worried. Are you okay?" The audacity of their concern made my blood boil. I silenced my phone and tried to think. Every memory was suddenly suspect, every interaction tainted. How many family dinners had they sat through, exchanging secret glances? How many times had Michael kissed me goodbye before slipping into my sister's waiting arms? How many wedding details had Olivia helped me choose while knowing the marriage was built on lies? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the harbor, a strange calm settled over me. I'd always been the nice Bennett, the one who avoided confrontation and sought peace at all costs. Olivia was the fighter, the one who drew battle lines and stood her ground. But in that moment, something fundamental shifted within me. This betrayal demanded more than tears or forgiveness, it demanded justice. I finally checked my voicemails. 5 from Olivia, each more desperate than the last. "Jess, I'm so sorry. That message wasn't. Please call me back. I need to explain. I know you've heard it by now. Please let me tell you my side. Michael doesn't know I accidentally sent you. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened." The last one made me laugh bitterly. It just happened. As if 6 months of deception could be summed up as some sort of accident, like spilling wine on a white carpet. No, this was deliberate. Calculated. And they had both looked me in the eye day after day while doing it. My mother's messages were more controlled but equally revealing. "Jessica, call me back immediately. Olivia is hysterical. Whatever you heard, we need to discuss this as a family. Don't make any rash decisions until we talk this through." There it was, the Bennett way. Image above all else. Handle scandals privately. Keep up appearances. Michael's messages started concerned but quickly became defensive. "Babe, where are you? I'm worried. Your sister is freaking out. What's going on? Jessica, you need to come home so we can talk about this." And finally, "This isn't entirely my fault, you know. You've been so wrapped up in your career lately." That last message confirmed what I needed to know. No real remorse. No genuine acceptance of responsibility. Just blame and justification. My fiancé and my sister were cut from the same cloth, selfish, entitled, and willing to sacrifice others for their own desires. As darkness fell over Charleston Harbor, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them immediately. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my tears or the opportunity to spin their narratives. No, the Bennett in me, the part I'd inherited from generations of strategic thinkers, knew that revenge served cold would be far more satisfying. I sent 3 identical texts, to Michael, to Olivia, and to my mother. I need some time. Don't contact me again until I reach out first. Then I booked a room at an out-of-the-way hotel, using cash instead of my credit card. I ordered room service, ate mechanically without tasting the food, and began to plan. For the first time in my life, I was about to become the architect of someone else's downfall rather than the supporter of their success. And strangely, as I opened my laptop and began researching, I felt more alive than I had in years. 3 days passed in that hotel room. 3 days of ignored calls, blocked numbers, and meticulous planning. I emerged only for necessities, wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, a disguise that would have seemed melodramatic under different circumstances, but felt necessary in our closely knit community where Bennett family news traveled fast. On the first day, I'd contacted my assistant, Zoe, with instructions to reschedule all upcoming shoots indefinitely, citing a family emergency. Loyal to a fault, she asked no questions beyond, "Are you safe?" When assured I was, she promised to handle everything. I had no doubt she would. Zoe had been managing the business side of my photography for years, allowing me the freedom to focus on the creative. By the second day, the calls from my family had reached frantic levels. My father, previously silent, finally left a voicemail that betrayed his lawyer's composure. "Jessica and Bennett, your behavior is unacceptable. Whatever grievances you have, we handle them within these 4 walls, not by disappearing. Come home immediately." The controlling tone that had cowed me throughout childhood now rang hollow. I spent those days systematically dismantling the life I'd built. I entered joint bank accounts, transferring my rightful half to a new account at a different bank. I contacted our wedding vendors, cancelling services under the guise of date changes rather than outright cancellations, a strategic move that preserved deposits while buying time. Most importantly, I gathered evidence. The voice memo was downloaded, backed up, and secured. I recovered deleted texts from a cloud backup I'd forgotten existed, messages between Michael and me that showed his calculated affection, always performative when family events approached, coldly distant when career obligations pulled me away from home. I combed through photos from the last 6 months, seeing with new eyes the subtle positioning, how Olivia always managed to stand beside Michael in group shots, how his hand often rested near, but not quite touching her in a way that now seemed glaringly obvious. There was even a holiday video where they disappeared simultaneously for 18 minutes, yes. I checked the timestamps, before returning from helping with dessert, with flushed faces, and slightly disheveled clothing. On the 3rd day, I called the one person outside the Bennett orbit whom I could trust implicitly, my college roommate, Diana Choi. Unlike most of my friends who had been charmed by Michael and intimidated by my family's status, Diana had always maintained a healthy skepticism about both. "I never liked him," she said simply after I explained the situation, her directness a balm to my raw emotions. "He looked at you like you were an achievement, not a person. And your sister, well, competing with you seems to be her lifelong hobby." Diana lived in Asheville now, a 4-hour drive from Charleston. "Come stay with me," she offered without hesitation. "Take as long as you need. My guest room is yours." That night, I checked out of the hotel and drove north under the cover of darkness. The familiar landscape of the Carolinas blurred past my windows, tobacco fields giving way to the rising silhouettes of the Blue Ridge Mountains. With each mile marker, I felt the suffocating weight of betrayal lifting slightly, replaced by the oxygen of possibility. Diana's home was exactly what I needed, a modernized cabin tucked into a hillside, surrounded by towering pines, and a profound silence broken only by birdsong. She greeted me with a fierce hug and a bottle of expensive bourbon. "No crying until at least the second glass," she warned, her dark eyes assessing me with the clinical precision I remembered from our pre-med days before she'd switched to computer science. "Drink first, plan second, breakdown optional and scheduled for tomorrow afternoon only." We sat on her deck until dawn, the mountain air crisp against my skin, as I emptied my heart of every detail. Diana listened without interruption, occasionally refilling my glass or passing tissues, but mostly just bearing witness to my pain in a way my family never had, without judgment or impatience. When I finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, but oddly lighter, she asked the question I'd been avoiding: "What do you want, Jess?" Not what you think you should want, or what your family would expect. What do you want? The answer surprised me with its immediate clarity. I want them to feel what I'm feeling. Not just the heartbreak, but the humiliation. The public exposure of their true selves. Diana nodded slowly. That's valid. But remember, revenge has diminishing returns. Make sure whatever you do closes this chapter rather than binding you to them forever. Her wisdom gave me pause. The elaborate schemes I'd been constructing in my hotel room suddenly seemed excessive, almost cartoonish in their complexity. Maybe you're right, I admitted. Maybe simple is better. Simple is always better, Diana confirmed. The truth has its own power. You don't need to embellish it. As morning light filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns across the deck, we refined my approach. No elaborate traps or public confrontations. Just strategic truth-telling that would allow the consequences to unfold naturally. The Bennett way was to hide uncomfortable truths, my new way would be to illuminate them. Over the next 2 weeks at Diana's, I began rebuilding myself. During the days, I hiked mountain trails until my legs ached, the physical exertion purging some of the restless anger. At night, Diana taught me basic coding, a skill I'd always wanted to learn, but had never prioritized. The logical problem-solving was therapeutic, requiring complete concentration that left no room for ruminating on betrayal. Slowly, I created distance from the Jessica, who had existed only in relation to others, my parents' artistic daughter, Olivia's supportive sister, Michael's adoring fiancé. In her place emerged someone more defined, with sharper edges and clearer boundaries. On day 16 of my self-imposed exile, I received an email from an unexpected source. Thomas Reeves, a senior partner at Olivia's law firm and my father's longtime friend, wanted to meet. Confidentially, his message stressed, followed by a private number not linked to the firm. Curious and slightly wary, I called. His assistant put me through immediately. "Jessica," he greeted me, his voice grave. "I believe we have mutual interests to discuss regarding your sister's professional conduct. Are you available for lunch tomorrow? Somewhere outside Charleston would be preferable." I suggested a restaurant halfway between Asheville and Charleston, in Greenville. His immediate agreement confirmed my suspicion that whatever he needed to discuss was significant enough to justify a 2-hour drive. "I'll see you at noon," he said before hanging up. "And Jessica, I'm truly sorry about your situation. The Bennetts have always demanded perfection without acknowledging their own flaws." As I set down my phone, Diana looked up from her laptop. "Well," she prompted. "I think," I said slowly, "the universe just handed me exactly what I need." A small, satisfied smile curved her lips. "Perfect timing. Because you, my friend, are finally ready to receive it." The restaurant in Greenville was upscale, but understated, neutral territory, with white tablecloths and discreet service. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a view of the entrance. Thomas Reeves appeared precisely at noon, his imposing figure instantly recognizable despite the casual attire that replaced his usual courtroom suits. At 62, Thomas had the weathered dignity of a man who'd navigated decades of high-stakes litigation. His silver hair and penetrating gaze had intimidated me at family functions throughout childhood, though he'd always treated me with a distant kindness. "Jessica," he said, taking the seat across from me. "You look well, all things considered." "Appearances can be deceiving," I replied. "As I've recently learned." He acknowledged this with a slight nod, waiting until the server had taken our orders and departed before leaning forward. "I'll be direct. Your sister has created a significant liability situation for the firm, and by extension, for your father's legacy." My breath caught. "I'm listening." "The Harrington case," he began, mentioning a high-profile divorce that had made local headlines. Olivia was lead counsel, representing Mrs. Harrington in what should have been a straightforward division of assets worth approximately $30 million. I remembered Olivia mentioning the case, her biggest to date. She'd been insufferably proud of landing such a prestigious client. 2 weeks ago, Thomas continued, opposing counsel presented evidence that Olivia had been intimately involved with Mr. Harrington during the proceedings. The parallels were not lost on me. "She has a pattern," I murmured. Thomas's expression remained professionally neutral, though a flicker of sympathy crossed his face. "Indeed. The evidence was irrefutable: text messages, hotel receipts, photographs." Mrs. Harrington was, understandably, devastated. "She's threatening to sue the firm for malpractice to the tune of $15 million. And my father doesn't know. Your father built this firm on his reputation for ethical conduct. I've been trying to contain the situation before it reaches him, but..." Thomas paused, choosing his words carefully. "Olivia's behavior has been increasingly erratic. She's missing meetings, making procedural errors. When confronted, she blamed exhaustion from family wedding preparations." The irony was bitter on my tongue. While helping plan my wedding, she'd been sleeping with my fiancé and apparently, her client's husband as well. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Thomas folded his hands on the table. "2 reasons. First, professional courtesy to your father. The firm's partners vote next week on whether to dismiss Olivia and self-report to the Bar Association. Your father should hear it from family first." I nodded slowly. "And the second reason? Mrs. Harrington deserves justice, as do you." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "I understand you've been sent certain communications that might demonstrate a pattern of behavior relevant to Olivia's judgment and character. The voice memo. Somehow, he knew about it." Seeing my surprise, he added, "Your mother consulted me about potential legal implications when Olivia realized what she'd done. Attorney-client privilege prevented me from acting on that information directly, but now that we have separate grounds for dismissal." Understanding dawned. "You want the voice memo for the partners' meeting?" "It would certainly strengthen our position," he acknowledged. "But more importantly, it might convince Olivia to resign quietly rather than face disbarment proceedings. That would spare your father some public humiliation, though certainly not all." I considered this carefully, tracing the condensation on my water glass. "And Michael? Where does he fit into this?" "Dr. Wright's conduct, while morally reprehensible, isn't my concern unless it directly impacts our firm. However," he added with calculated precision, "I understand he's being considered for Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Charleston Memorial. The board might be interested in his character assessment before making such a significant appointment." The pieces aligned with perfect clarity. Thomas was offering me leverage. Not just against Olivia, but Michael as well. A way to exact professional consequences that would outlast any personal humiliation I could devise. "The hospital board chairman plays golf with my husband every Sunday," Thomas remarked casually. "Strictly confidential, of course." Of course. Our meals arrived, and we shifted to inconsequential conversation about the restaurant's renowned chef and Thomas's recent fishing trip. But beneath the pleasantries, a transaction had occurred. When the check came, he insisted on paying. "Consider it an apology," he said, signing the credit card slip with a flourish. The Reeves and Bennett families have been allies for 40 years. I should have seen the warning signs in Olivia sooner. As we walked to the parking lot, he handed me a business card with a personal email address handwritten on the back. "If you decide to share that recording, this is secure. And Jessica." He paused beside his Mercedes. "Whatever you choose, don't let them minimize what they've done. The Bennett tendency to preserve appearances at all costs, it's destroyed more than one person's soul." With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving me standing in the afternoon sunlight with a decision to make. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, turning the business card over in my fingers, weighing consequences against satisfaction. Finally, I composed an email from my phone, attached the voice memo file, and pressed send before I could reconsider. On the drive back to Asheville, my phone rang, my father's private line. I connected it through the car's Bluetooth. "Jessica." His voice filled the vehicle, tight with controlled fury. "Thomas Reeves just called an emergency partners meeting for tomorrow morning. Do you know anything about this?" "Yes," I answered simply. A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of his measured breathing. Finally, "How bad?" "Bad enough that you'll want to hear it from me first," I replied. "I'm driving now. I can be at your office by 9 tomorrow morning." Another pause. "Your mother tells me this involves Michael and Olivia." "It does." "I see." The weight of disappointment in those two words was crushing, though I couldn't tell if it was directed at them or me. 9 o'clock, then. After he hung up, I pulled into a scenic overlook, needing a moment to process what I'd set in motion. The Blue Ridge Mountains spread before me in undulating waves of green and blue, indifferent to human dramas. I took a photo with my professional camera, adjusting the focus and aperture by muscle memory, finding comfort in the familiar ritual. When I checked my phone again, there was a text from Diana: "Whatever happened today, remember you're rewriting your story, not ending theirs." Her words steadied me. This wasn't about destroying Olivia and Michael, it was about reclaiming my narrative and ensuring consequences for betrayal. Tomorrow would be difficult, confronting my family with truths they'd rather ignore. But for the first time since hearing that voice memo, I felt a sense of purpose stronger than my pain. I drove back to Diana's house with the windows down, mountain air filling my lungs. Tomorrow would be a reckoning, but tonight was still mine, to prepare, to breathe, to remember who Jessica Bennett was before she became someone's fiancé or sister or daughter. As I pulled into Diana's driveway, my phone chimed with a news alert from the Charleston Post and Courier: "Bennett and Associates faces potential malpractice suit in Harrington divorce." The story was breaking faster than even Thomas had anticipated. Hey everyone, can you believe we are already halfway through this wild ride? If you're as invested in this family drama as I am, please hit that like button right now. I still remember sitting in that car, looking at those mountains, feeling like I was at the turning point of my entire life. Have you ever had a moment where you knew nothing would ever be the same again? Let me know in the comments. And if you're new here and want to see how this justice story ends, now would be a great time to subscribe and turn on those notifications. Because trust me, what happens next shocked even me, and I lived through it. The Bennett and Associates building stood like a fortress in downtown Charleston's historic district, 5 stories of restored brick and gleaming windows that housed 3 generations of legal prestige. As I pulled into the private parking lot at precisely 8:45 the next morning, I noticed 2 significant absences. Olivia's sleek Audi and my mother's Mercedes were nowhere to be seen. The receptionist, Gladys, who'd worked for my father since before I was born, greeted me with uncharacteristic solemnity. "They are waiting in the conference room, Miss Jessica." "All of them?" "All of them." The weight of those words settled between my shoulders as I rode the elevator to the top floor. I'd expected to meet only my father, perhaps Thomas. But all of them suggested a tribunal rather than a private conversation. The conference room dominated the east wing, with windows overlooking Charleston Harbor. As Gladys opened the heavy door for me, 6 faces turned in my direction, my father at the head of the table, flanked by Thomas and 3 other senior partners. And at the far end, looking small and uncharacteristically disheveled, sat Olivia. No Michael. No mother. Just my sister, her eyes red-rimmed and defiant even in defeat. "Jessica," my father said, rising. For the first time in my memory, Richard Bennett looked his age, 68 years etched deeply around his eyes and mouth. "Thank you for coming." I took the empty chair directly across from Olivia, meeting her gaze steadily. She was the first to look away. "We've been discussing the Harrington situation," my father continued, his lawyer's voice perfectly modulated despite the personal nature of the crisis. "And Olivia's other lapse in judgment regarding your fiancé." "Ex-fiancé," I corrected quietly. "Of course." He nodded, a muscle working in his jaw. "Given the circumstances, Olivia has agreed to tender her resignation, effective immediately." Olivia made a small, wounded sound but didn't contradict him. "The firm will issue a statement citing personal reasons for her departure," Thomas added. "Mrs. Harrington has been approached with a settlement offer that should mitigate public exposure, provided Olivia surrenders her partnership stake to cover the financial penalties." Business as usual. The Bennett way. Contain the damage, preserve the appearance of dignity, pay whatever it costs to keep scandal at bay. "And that's sufficient?" I asked, looking around the table at these men who'd been fixtures at our family gatherings, who'd watched Olivia and me grow up. She betrayed a client's trust, violated professional ethics, and potentially jeopardized a $30 million settlement. Not to mention. I let my gaze rest on my sister. Other betrayals. "The Bar Association will still need to be notified," one of the partners said, at least having the grace to look uncomfortable. "But with her voluntary resignation and your father's substantial contribution to the settlement, we believe formal disbarment proceedings can be avoided." Of course. Money solving problems that character created. Another Bennett family tradition. I see. I folded my hands on the polished table, feeling strangely calm. "And what does our mother think of this arrangement?" My father's expression tightened. "Your mother is handling this as well as can be expected. She's at home, resting." "Sedated, you mean?" Olivia spoke for the first time, her voice raspy. "Dad had Dr. Winters prescribe something after she broke 3 Waterford crystal vases and threatened to call the Harringtons herself." The image of my perfectly controlled mother having a breakdown violent enough to require medication was almost inconceivable, and yet somehow satisfying. "That's enough, Olivia," my father said sharply. "We are here to finalize the terms of your separation from the firm, not to discuss family matters." "Aren't they the same thing?" I asked. "Hasn't this firm always been an extension of the Bennett family image? Perfect, prestigious, beyond reproach." Thomas exchanged glances with my father. "Perhaps we should give you both a moment alone. The partners and I will continue this discussion in my office." The others rose, filing out with murmured platitudes about difficult situations and family privacy. When the door closed behind them, the silence between Olivia and me stretched taut as piano wire. "You didn't have to destroy my career," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This was between us. Like Michael was between us." I countered. "Or did you think sleeping with my fiancé was somehow a private matter that didn't concern me?" She flinched. "It wasn't planned, Jessica. It just If you say it just happened, I swear I will throw you through that window. The vehemence in my voice surprised even me. Olivia's eyes widened slightly. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who absorbed conflicts rather than created them. This new, steely Jessica clearly unsettled her. I loved him, she said simply, as if that explained everything. I still do. And I loved you, I replied. That's the difference between us. You only ever loved yourself. She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. I've protected you our whole lives. When those girls in middle school. Stop. I held up a hand. Don't you dare use childhood defenses to justify adult betrayal. You didn't protect me from anything. You just made sure you always looked better by comparison. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing, no sympathy, no satisfaction, just a hollow confirmation that the sister I thought I had never truly existed. What happens now? She asked, sounding younger than her 32 years. Now? I leaned back in my chair. Now you lose everything that matters to you, just like I did. Your career. Your reputation. Your relationship with our parents. I paused. And Michael. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? He doesn't know yet that I know, I explained calmly. But he will, along with the Charleston Memorial Board considering him for chief of surgery. I wonder how they'll feel about his ethics. You can't do that, she whispered. His career is apparently fair game, I finished for her. Just like my engagement was. The door opened before she could respond, our father returning alone. One look at his face told me decisions had been made. The paperwork is ready, he told Olivia. Thomas has advised that you sign everything today, before the news breaks further. She nodded mutely, then gathered her belongings with shaking hands. At the door, she paused, looking back at me. I am sorry, Jess. Not for loving him, but for hurting you. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, and still it wasn't enough. After she left, my father sank heavily into a chair, suddenly looking every day of his age and then some. Your mother and I failed you both, he said quietly. We raised Olivia to believe she deserved whatever she wanted, and we taught you to accommodate everyone else's happiness before your own. It was an unprecedented admission from a man who considered vulnerability a weakness. I didn't know how to respond. What will you do about the wedding? He asked. Cancel it, I replied simply. I've already handled most of it. He nodded, then reached into his suit jacket and withdrew an envelope. This is yours. No conditions attached. Inside was a cashier's check for $200,000, the exact amount they'd contributed to our wedding budget. I don't want your money, Dad. It's not a bribe or compensation, he said firmly. It's an acknowledgement that you're owed a fresh start, free from Bennett family expectations. Use it, don't use it. But know it's there. As I left the building, a text from Diana lit up my phone. Well, it's done, I replied. Meeting Michael next. Her response was immediate, want backup. I smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks. No. This one I need to do alone. I chose a public place for my confrontation with Michael, the rooftop bar of the Vendu, where tourists and locals mingled over cocktails while admiring panoramic views of Charleston Harbor. Public enough to prevent a scene, exclusive enough that word wouldn't immediately spread through our social circles. He was already waiting when I arrived, nursing a whiskey neat and checking his watch repeatedly. The sight of him, handsome in his hospital scrubs, dark hair slightly tousled, no longer produced the flutter of attraction I'd grown accustomed to. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold clarity. Jess, he stood as I approached, relief evident in his expression. Thank God. I've been worried sick. Where have you been? I slid into the chair across from him, placing my phone face up on the table between us. I needed some time to think. About what? What's going on? His concern seemed genuine, which only underscored his capacity for deception. Olivia's been a wreck, your mother won't take my calls, and your father practically threw me out of the house when I stopped by yesterday. I wonder why, I said mildly, signaling a server. I ordered a gin and tonic, waiting until she departed before continuing. How long have you been sleeping with my sister, Michael? The color drained from his face, his expression cycling rapidly through shock, denial, and finally, calculation. Always the surgeon, assessing damage, determining the best approach for repair. Who told you that? He asked, buying time. Olivia did. Though not intentionally. I pressed play on the voice memo, watching his face as my sister's voice filled the space between us. By the end, he'd closed his eyes, his knuckles white around his whiskey glass. It wasn't supposed to happen, he began, using the exact phrase I'd warned Olivia against. And yet it did. For 6 months, apparently. He set down his glass carefully. I was going to end it after the wedding. I actually laughed, the sound sharp enough to turn heads at nearby tables. That was your plan. Marry me first, then break it off with my sister. How considerate. You don't understand, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. Your family's connections, your father's influence, they were crucial for my career advancement. The Bennett name opens doors in this city that would otherwise stay closed. The calculated admission stunned me into momentary silence. I'd expected denials, excuses, perhaps even tears. Not this cold acknowledgement that I'd been a means to an end. So I was just a stepping stone. The realization was somehow both devastating and liberating. And Olivia? Something flickered in his eyes then, a genuine emotion I couldn't quite identify. Olivia was unexpected. She was convenient, I corrected. Available when I was working, eager for attention, and already embedded in your carefully constructed narrative. My drink arrived. I took a long sip, letting the gin burn a path down my throat, giving me courage for what came next. The board meeting for Chief of Surgery is next week, isn't it? Tuesday, if I remember correctly. His expression sharpened. How did you know that? Charleston is a small city, Michael. People talk. Especially people who sit on hospital boards and law firm partnerships. I traced the condensation on my glass. I wonder how they'd feel about a candidate who sleeps with his fiancé's sister. Or one who strategically pursues relationships for career advancement. You wouldn't, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I already have. I met his gaze steadily. Thomas Reeves plays golf with the board chairman every Sunday. They had a very interesting conversation yesterday afternoon. Michael paled further, if that was possible. Jessica, be reasonable. My career is apparently more important to you than any concept of loyalty or basic human decency, I finished for him. Which makes you uniquely unqualified for a leadership position, don't you think? He was silent for a long moment, fingers drumming against the table as he recalculated his approach. Finally, he leaned forward, voice lowered to an intimate pitch that once would have made my heart race. What do you want, Jess? Money. I'll write you a check right now for whatever amount you name. The apartment. It's yours. Just tell me what it will take to make this go away. The transactional nature of his offer, as if betrayal could be settled like a business arrangement, was the final confirmation I needed. This man had never loved me. He'd valued what I represented, what I could provide, but never me. I don't want anything from you, I said quietly. Not anymore. I stood, gathering my purse. He reached for my wrist, his surgeon's grip firm, but not painful. You're really going to throw away 3 years over one mistake? 6 months of deception isn't one mistake, I replied, gently extracting my arm from his grasp. It's thousands of individual choices to lie, every single day. His face hardened, the charming mask dropping completely. You'll regret this. Your sister already does. Did you know she's been asked to resign from the firm? Your precious family name won't protect either of you from the gossip. Probably not, I agreed. But I'd rather face gossip with integrity than live a life built on lies. As I turned to leave, he called after me, "What about the ring?" I looked back at him over my shoulder, at this stranger I'd nearly married. "Keep it. Consider it payment for showing me who you really are before it was too late." Walking away from Michael Wright, from the life we'd planned together, should have felt monumental. Instead, with each step across the rooftop bar, I felt lighter, as if shedding an identity that had never quite fit. By the time the elevator doors closed behind me, I was already mentally packing for my return to Asheville, to the mountain silence that had become more home in 3 weeks than Charleston had felt in years. In the lobby, I nearly collided with a woman I recognized instantly, Eliza Harrington, Olivia's former client. She was striking in that particular way of old Charleston money, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, diamonds glinting discreetly at her ears. "You're Jessica Bennett," she said, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Olivia's sister." I nodded, unsure what to say to this woman whose divorce had been complicated by my sister's betrayal. "I heard about your situation," she continued, her accent pure low-country aristocracy. "Seems we've both been on the receiving end of misplaced trust." "I'm sorry for what my sister did," I offered, feeling a strange responsibility to apologize for Olivia's actions. Eliza studied me thoughtfully. "You know, I'm launching a foundation with part of my settlement. Supporting women rebuilding their lives after betrayal." She reached into her purse, extracting a business card. "We need a photographer for our website and promotional materials. Someone who understands the journey." I accepted the card, speechless at the unexpected opportunity. "Your work is excellent," she added. "I've seen your exhibitions. Call me when you're ready." As she glided past me toward the elevator, I stood motionless in the lobby, turning her card over in my fingers. Perhaps this was what Diana had meant about rewriting my own story. New connections, new possibilities, ones I'd earned through talent rather than family name. Outside, Charleston's late afternoon light bathed the historic streets in honeygold. I pulled out my phone and called Diana. "It's done," I told her. "Both confrontations." "And," she prompted. "And I think it's time to come home to Asheville permanently," I replied, feeling the truth of it settle into my bones. "Charleston has too many ghosts now." "The guest room is yours as long as you need," she said immediately. "But Jess, don't run away. Move forward. There's a difference." As I ended the call, a notification appeared, an email from Thomas Reeves with the subject line, "Board decision." I opened it with steady hands, already knowing what it would say. Michael would not be named chief of surgery. Actions, as my father always said, had consequences. 6 months can change everything. The mountain seasons had turned from spring to summer, clothing the Blue Ridge in lush greenery that seemed to breathe with life. I'd traded Charleston's historic charm for Asheville's artistic energy, salt breezes for pine-scented air, and family expectations for self-determination. Diana's guest room had been temporary, as she'd insisted it should be. Roommates again was fun for nostalgia, she'd said 3 months in, but you need your own space to really rebuild. She'd helped me find the perfect rental, a converted carriage house behind a Victorian home in Montford, with exposed brick walls ideal for displaying my work, and north-facing windows that bathed my small studio in perfect natural light. The rent was reasonable enough that I could establish my photography business without touching my father's check, which remained deposited but unspent in a separate account. Eliza Harrington had been true to her word. The Phoenix Foundation, named for rising from the ashes of betrayal, had hired me as their primary photographer. The work was fulfilling beyond measure, capturing images of women at various stages of rebuilding their lives. Their faces told stories of resilience that resonated with my own experience. This anniversary of sorts seemed an appropriate time to capture something meaningful just for myself. I parked at an overlook and hiked a short trail to a less frequented viewpoint. The valley spread before me in a tapestry of greens and blues, mountains rolling into the distance like waves on a vast, verdant ocean. I set up my tripod, losing myself in the familiar ritual of adjusting settings, finding angles, waiting for perfect light. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice another hiker approach until a voice spoke beside me. "The composition is beautiful." I turned to find a woman about my age studying my camera setup with appreciative eyes. She had the weathered tan of someone who spent considerable time outdoors, dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and an easy confidence in her stance. "Thanks," I replied, making a small adjustment to my aperture. "The light's perfect right now. Mind if I watch? I'm trying to improve my own photography skills." I gestured to the space beside me, and she settled there comfortably, observing without intrusion as I worked. There was something peaceful about her presence, undemanding yet engaged. "I'm Elena," she offered after a while. "Forest Service researcher. I document ecological changes in these mountains." "Jessica," I replied. "Photographer." "Professionally?" she asked, genuinely interested rather than making conversation. I nodded. "Based in Asheville now, though I started in Charleston." "Quite a change," she observed. "What brought you here?" 6 months ago, I might have deflected with a vague answer about career opportunities or artistic inspiration. But the Jessica, who had emerged from betrayal, had learned the value of authentic truth. "A voice memo," I said simply. One that revealed my fiancé was sleeping with my sister. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained free of the pity I'd come to dread. "That would do it," she acknowledged. "How long ago?" 6 months today, actually." She considered this. "And are you glad you know? Or would you rather still be in Charleston, planning a wedding built on lies?" The directness of her question was refreshing. "Glad," I said without hesitation. The truth hurt, but the illusion would have destroyed me slowly. She nodded, satisfied with my answer. "My ex-wife lied about wanting children for 7 years," she offered. "When she finally admitted she'd never intended to have them, I realized our entire relationship had been built on her telling me what she thought I wanted to hear." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. Elena shrugged. 3 years later, I'm thankful. Living honestly is better, even when it's harder." I took several more shots as the afternoon light shifted, Elena occasionally asking thoughtful questions about technique or composition. When I finally packed up my equipment, she pulled out a business card. "The service is looking for a photographer for our conservation education materials," she explained. "Seasonal contract, decent pay. Your eye for landscape is exactly what we need." I accepted the card, our fingers brushing briefly. "I'll think about it." "Do," she said with a smile. "And maybe we could get coffee sometime. I know all the best trails for photography around here." As she walked away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, the quiet flutter of possibility. Not just professionally, but personally. The realization that new connections could form without agenda or calculation, based simply on shared interests and honest exchange. That evening, as Diana and her boyfriend chatted about weekend plans, I found myself smiling genuinely, participating in their conversation without the shadow of past betrayals coloring my perspective. When Diana noticed, raising a questioning eyebrow, I simply shrugged. "Good day?" she asked during a moment alone in her kitchen. "Unexpected day," I corrected, showing her Elena's business card and explaining our meeting. Diana's smile was knowing. See? Forward, not away. Later that night, in my carriage house with its exposed brick and perfect light, I uploaded the day's photos. They were among the best landscapes I'd ever captured. There was a clarity to them, a depth of field that seemed to reach beyond the visual into something more profound. I sent one to my father with a simple message, "Life in Asheville. Different but good." His response came minutes later, "Beautiful perspective. Your mother asks if you'll consider Christmas at home this year." Home. The word no longer conjured Charleston's historic streets, or the Bennett family mansion. Home had become this small carriage house, these mountains, this new life I was building brick by deliberate brick. But perhaps there was room for reconciliation with the past without being consumed by it. Maybe, I texted back. One day at a time. As I prepared for bed, my phone pinged with an email notification. Eliza Harrington, with the subject line, "Expansion Opportunity." The Phoenix Foundation was opening a satellite office in Asheville, and she wanted me to head their visual communications department. A full-time position with creative control and the chance to help other women tell their stories of resilience and rebirth. 6 months ago, a voice memo had shattered my world. Today, standing in the ruins of what I'd thought was perfect, I'd built something more genuine, a life defined by truth rather than appearance, by earned connections rather than inherited ones. I thought of Olivia, somewhere in Atlanta, living with the consequences of her choices. Of Michael, his ambitions thwarted by his own character. They had each other now, for whatever that was worth, but I had something more valuable, myself, whole and unburdened by deception. As I drifted toward sleep, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow for the first time in months. There would be photos to take, trails to explore, coffee to share with an intriguing forest researcher, and a new professional chapter to consider. The best revenge, it turned out, wasn't in destroying those who had hurt me, it was in creating a life they couldn't touch, one truthful moment at a time. Hey everyone! Wow, I can't believe we've reached the end of this incredible journey together. This story has been such a cathartic experience to share with all of you. If you've ever experienced betrayal, or had to rebuild your life from scratch, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. What was your voice memo moment that changed everything? How did you find the strength to move forward instead of just running away? If you enjoyed this family karma story, please hit that like button, it really helps the channel. And if you want to hear more real-life dramas with satisfying endings where justice gets served, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll be sharing a new story every week about life's unexpected twists and the lessons I've learned along the way. Thank you so much for listening, for your support, and for being part of this healing journey with me. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.